Back in May of 2015, me and a few close buddies of mine went on a backpacking venture off in the mountains for 4 or 5 days. But it wasn't until the third and fourth day that we would have our strange sighting of this person who seemed to be obsessed with following us around. Enough of background info. Let me jump right to the story. The first 3 days of camping and hiking went great. We would set up tent, fish, cook food, hike, rinse and repeat. And at nighttime, once we had established a firm camping spot, we would eat a lot of food, fish, drink beer, pass out, also making sure to keep well hydrated. It was a blast. Then, on the third day, we saw what appeared to be another hiker, although he was dressed in very strange clothing, kind of looking like he came out of Jumanji or a Peter Pan movie. And unlike us, he also was not walking on any trail, but kind of off on a ridge in the distance, close enough that we could see him, see what he was wearing, and see that his behavior was strange, but far enough away we couldn't exactly see his face. As that day progressed, later into the late afternoon, we found a really nice camping spot right next to a small lake or a larger pond. Great trout, by the way. But halfway through fishing, we noticed we see that same guy again, who must have followed us at least 4 miles up trail. And now, he was standing on the opposite end of this small lake or large pond, just beyond the trees, keeping watch of us. My friend pointed him out to me, and I think we were all a little unnerved by the whole thing. So I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna go talk to this guy. Give him the benefit of a doubt. Maybe he needs help. My friends thoroughly advised me not to, because we don't know who he is. We're out here in the middle of the woods all by ourselves. I mean, there's no telling if he had a weapon or anything. So I ignore that, and my gut instinct. So I go and try and talk to this guy. He sees me coming around the lake, coming towards him, and when I get maybe 100 feet away from him, he just takes off running in the opposite direction. So I just stop, and I'm like, alright, whatever. I'm not dealing with this. So I just turn right back around, walk back towards camp, and tell my friends everything that happened. They kind of just blow it off. I mean, some crazy man in the woods is following us around, right? What could possibly go wrong? Well, the sun begins to go down, we start a fire, have some fish that night, a couple of beers and water, and we kind of forget all about this weird dude watching us in the woods. As we're getting ready to go to bed that night, I have to go take a leak in the woods. So I step just out of the range of the fire, just to go and relieve myself, when I could hear something or somebody crunching around in the leaves, not far away. Immediately, my attention is sprung up around me, and my eyes, at this point, have kind of somewhat adjusted to the darkness, since I wasn't in the light of the fire any longer. And I swear, maybe 4 trees away, I saw what appeared to be a person crouching behind a tree, watching me. Then I immediately remembered this guy from earlier, and I put all the dots together in my head. So I yelled out, "Hey, I know you're there. I could see you." And what does he do? He takes off running again. Assuming that was who this was, I just hear them turn around and start bolting off, running. So without peeing, I walk back to camp, which is maybe 20 feet, and my friends are all alerted because they obviously had heard me yelling, asking me what was going on. I tell them what I saw, and that I believe it was the guy from earlier. Now we're all kind of up in arms and kind of paranoid, not really sure what to expect next. After all, we didn't exactly know who this person was, or really what they were capable of. We had to have our guard up at all times to honestly be safe. We all just stayed up, huddled around the fire, and it kind of killed any good mood or vibe we had going on for the evening. I was beginning to think that he was going to attack our campsite, and we were all going to be murdered by the morning. And finally, about 1 or 2 in the morning comes, and we all decide that it's time to turn in. But I just could not shake the feeling that this creep out there was waiting for the right opportunity for us to fall asleep. So I climb in my sleeping bag, lay it on my head, and I try my best to attempt to sleep. My few friends are a little bit more inebriated than I am, Actually, at that point, I had no alcohol in my system at all, so I lied there awake for easily what felt like a whole other hour. My other 3 friends were snoring. I'm trying to fall asleep, but I just can't. I'm too paranoid, thinking that this guy is going to come and get us. I don't know. Then I hear somebody approaching our campsite, and now I'm fully alerted. I start listening intently, and I could hear footsteps approaching my friend's tent. Now I'm fully alert, ready for action, and stupid me did not bring a single weapon with us, except a dainty little pocket knife. I don't know what I was thinking, and when I look back, I'll always kick myself for this. I could hear whoever it was outside my friend's tent was feeling around. I could hear their hands running across the fabric of the tent, almost like they were looking for a zipper, which they probably were. The fire was just coals and embers now, so it should be pretty dark out there. I was in my own tent, by myself, and I had no idea what to do, how to alert their attention. Then, I hear the zipper start to slowly go down on their tent. I hear it go down just about all the way, and then silence. So I'm sitting there in my sleeping bag, realizing I have no weapon. And what if this guy comes to my tent and does the same thing? I'm completely defenseless. God forbid he has a gun or a knife. Or maybe this is some deliverance thing, where I'm gonna get raped. So I'm laying there, expecting to hear something, waiting for something to happen, but nothing ever does. And now I believe hours go by, and eventually, it starts getting light outside, and then the sun is coming up. As soon as there's even a glimpse of light, I jump outside my tent, enough that I can somewhat see around me. I quickly run over to my friend's tent, jump in there, and wake him up pretty violently, telling him, "Dude, what happened?" And of course, he's sound asleep. So I startled him, and he's like, "Why are you waking me up? What's going on?" I told him, "Dude, your tent zipper was wide open. Did you see what happened last night?" He looks completely confused and stunned as to what I'm even talking about. I told him, I was lying in my tent last night, after everybody else had fallen asleep, and I heard footsteps from the woods come up to your tent, open the zipper slowly, and, well, I told him I didn't hear anything after that. But as I'm explaining this to him, the color drains from his face, because he too saw that guy the day before, so we only knew it could be one person. But he also says that some point early in the night, or the morning, he thinks he woke up and saw this figure standing just outside of his tent, but he convinced himself he was dreaming, so he fell back asleep. Now he knew that that was a reality. We both jump up out of his tent, completely creeped out, wake up our other friends, and kind of scour our campsite, looking for any evidence of anything he might have done. Nothing. No food or supplies were taken, or even rifled through. There's no tracks or evidence he was even here. Weird. Why would somebody come here? What was their purpose? And honestly, there's no telling how long he was standing there with the tent door open, watching my friend sleep. Just thinking about it makes me shudder. After that, we hiked back, and got back pretty quickly. It did take the whole day, but we never saw that strange man again, and I hope we never do. I've been homeless a lot. I've lived in some distant family's land, where they have old cabins up on stilts, due to the local woods flooding heavily sometimes. Illinois is weird. Anyway, I spent a good amount of time in this old cabin. Wood stove, porch swing hanging from the ceiling that I would use as a bed. Overall, it was an okay place, and it wasn't too far of a drive to town for food. You just had to tolerate the half-mile walk to your car. One day, I am out walking around the woods in a smallish clearing in the path. I see easily a good 50 to 60 dead geese. Every single one of them is mangled in horrific ways. Necks ripped off the body. Bodies splayed out over old timbers and fence posts. Feathers are everywhere, bones sticking out of the dirt. It looked just like a straight-up goose genocide. The ground was dry, though. There was a whole lot of dust. I saw no prints. There was no other evidence of anything being in the area, aside from what can only assume was some sort of strange breed of exploding goose. I also found a torn open old backpack and a great deal of candy wrappers strewn about it, all way too moldy to identify anything about it. So I decided to turn back and see if I could grab a camera when I start hearing this god-awful shrieking noise, as if it were coming from every possible nook and cranny within a 30-foot radius. I took off pretty fast when that started. To this day, my best guess is some sort of massive commune of foxes. It really is the only rational solution I could come to. Still, scared me to death. Oh man, I hope someone reads this, because holy cow. I enjoy primitive camping, and me and my wife go out sometimes just by ourselves. We usually bring the dog, spend a couple of nights. This time, though, we invited some friends for drinking shenanigans. Anyway, on the first day, we hear a vehicle coming down the road. Not odd. There are maybe 10 more sites on this several miles of road. It's a dirt road, with nothing there but these primitive sites. One way in, one way out. What is odd, though, is that the vehicle was a meatpacking truck, or maybe ice cream truck. It was old, really old, and all the lettering and signage was faded or had been taken off at some point. It was this fading beige and decrepit. None of us actually made out the person driving it, but there were no tags or plates on the back at all. So, we all get creeped out, but collectively kind of decide it wasn't as weird as we thought, and get back to enjoying our night. Flash forward to the next morning. My mom calls. She's panicking, freaking out. Apparently, some hikers were abducted near us. There are several girls at our site, including my wife, and she is convinced it was them. No names were released. I wanted to know how near, so I pulled up my GPS and an article I found about it with their last known locations. It was roughly about a half-mile away from where we were. I legit don't remember what happened after that, but I'm scouring the news from those years. It's a hard-to-find article. I want to say they found one of the girls tied to a tree. Apparently, there are quite a lot of people abducted and murdered on and near the parkway finding this. Pretty sure they never found the guy, but I guess it is the perfect place for any serial killer to act out his fantasies. Not exactly terrifying, but definitely a creepy find. So, this past summer, in 2017, I was working on a project monitoring amphibian larvae in vernal pools. Many of them were in the middle of a wide expanse of state land, largely unpatrolled. Technically, with no public access, but plenty of old logging roads and ATV trails that people don't usually use for poetic strolls at sunrise, or through nature, or even bird watching. I stumbled onto a lot of illegal dumps with weird things. Sofas, construction equipment, hundreds of chew cans, baby clothes, you name it. Not to mention plenty of abandoned camps and hangouts for people to shoot up heroin. Plenty of disposed of paraphernalia, after all. But, without a doubt, the creepiest thing I stumbled across, while all alone for about 5 miles from a paved road, following only game trails, was an upright, gently used baby stroller. There were toys in the storage areas, and a blanket still in the main area. I even have a picture of it on my old phone. I just stood there, staring at it. Like any moment, something from the hills have eyes was about to step out from the woods. I have no explanation for what or why this was out here, and I'm sure you don't either.